Welcome to TradeTheNBA.com. This is John's report is for the 15th. Well, no surprise, we continued lower, unable to reach that 23%. And particularly when a daily chart is visible, and you can check this, as soon as we get below that 25, as long as the magenta stays below the 25, and you don't have a steel reset, in this particular case on the DOC, markets tend to continue to move lower and stay that way. So we're at a point where obviously pivot ups can happen. In this particular case, we've got DOC red and green rising. Steel falling, so a pivot up of shorts at this particular point would be more detrimental to at least price erosion. But we're likely to continue to bounce back and forth here because the market still doesn't know how to equate what's going on in the world, and there's just a lot of unknowns, and they're not changing anytime soon. That white NBI lead here when we were looking at NASDAQ did exactly what's expected with it. It moved to 0% and achieved that, and that was pretty clear once the pivot of orange started back up. So as long as that is there, we're probably likely to make some new lows. And there's been some erosion in some of the bigger names, and that's been critical. No shock with this, as much as people think that everything is hunky-dory because the Venezuelans are now going to supply oil. We had a serious positive extremes that needed to be filled, and in fact, that's exactly what's taking place. It doesn't change the quantifiables, still over 100 a barrel at this particular stage, and that's going to maintain its price pressures on just about everything. Doesn't really even account for the commodity issue of food, because the bans on fertilizer, we haven't got the total of what Russia's going to block, but we're starting to see the catalysts elsewhere in the world. Argentina just announced they're not going to export soybeans. So there's going to be a food protectionism going on around the world that will also add to another interesting aspect of it. So there's a lot of dynamics taking place, and markets got to absorb all that and figure out where it goes. And of course, the potential for the rate hike. You have the big option expiration at the end of the week. Trillions, like 3 trillion plus. Derivatives, everything, so significant. Euro, still unable to do anything, and not going anywhere anytime soon. They can play the funny games, but it doesn't really change the quintessential fact that the Eurozone is a disaster and potentially could face catastrophic situation should at any point Russia decide to cut off natural gas or any of these other things, irrespective of the debt issue, which probably is more central to where the euro is and whether or not Russia will default on its obligations simply because all of their foreign reserves have been seized. As I promised before, when we were seeing all these moves of treasuries, this being TLT, I suggested they would break the lows, and in fact they have, and that's just an indication rates are going up whether the Fed does anything about it or not. From a crypto standpoint, we kind of moved forward here. And you can see the turnaround, NBI with magenta leading. Yellow, but white's still over, but with the green over, that's still bullish, so I would expect that it's got more to the move as it is right now. No shock with that. And ETH still very clean from its readings, based down at the lows and then bought all the way back up. So it was really nice to see from a clarity standpoint. From 50K, that was pretty clear for most of the day. White had led here, suggesting a move to the waiting BI, and once we moved with magenta below 25, that began to cascade and we went right to the 0 point pretty darn quick. 5K standpoint, intraday, the beginning of the pre-market was back and forth. We had a nice push up all the way to the previous 42-44 range, and then as we got closer to the open, boom, we moved all the way to the lows, and then we caught a little bit of a bid mid portion. By the time first half hour trading was done, that happened, and the realization that quote unquote peace talks, blah blah blah, were not working out, and hit it all the way to the lows. And every time magenta pivots lower, below 25, below the 23%, it's just a free range to short, and it's exactly what happens. It just continues to cascade lower, and it stayed pretty much that way even later in the day when we broke down here, moved below, and then started to build a little bit as magenta started leading over yellow throughout a lot of that, but still under that 25, which is the softness. You can see as soon as it popped up above, that led to the cascade higher, and so it becomes kind of a relevant point to pay attention to when thinking about flipping or versus staying short or adding into a short position when you have some of these strong leads that you expect a continuation, like here where you're moving down to 23%, but magenta pivots back up. That's a likelihood that you're not going to get a 0%. You may get a retrace back to 23, but in this particular case, it didn't even do that because it just continued to build. There's plenty of time to get out of it, but or flip around to the opposite direction of it as soon as it changes. I like to look at DOC, and as soon as green starts to make a move, or in this particular case where you get that orange dipping below red, I'm always cognizant of what these readings are, because that's usually the beginning of turnaround move. Throw in gold rising on the shakeout. All the recipes for a little mini rally in this particular case just brought us back up to 100%, and it's still leading okay at this particular point because above 33 at this particular stage. So clear points that we've had from before, 4182, then 4200, and that gap up there to the 4230 range. Continue to watch out for that. Just expect more fireworks. The more things get pushed to one direction, I think there's plenty of upside counterbalancing that will take place, particularly as option players will be the predominant reason for movements, unless there's some major news event that alters it. So the key is go with the flow of what the paint bar coloration changes, and you can certainly see the effects of them within the MBI readings as well as DOC. As always, though, I will update you on the Skype chat. Trade well. We'll talk to you later.